Jenna is my name. Growing up, Linda, my twin sister, and I were very different from one another. I was not the golden girl she was. Our mom was the ideal housewife, devoted to her family and home, and she always encouraged us to follow her lead. Our dad was a severe university professor who was buried in books and lectures. Being at home has always felt to me like sitting through an endless round of criticism. My parents had envisioned the ideal family, and it did not include a quiet daughter who wore band t-shirts. My mother's favorite thing to say, "Jenna, why can't you be more like your sister?" was generally directed at me when I would show up at breakfast wearing headphones in an attempt to block out the outside world. Linda, however, was enveloped in a sense of validation. "Why is it so difficult for you to wear a nice dress and smile more?" she would ask, casually tossing her flawless hair over her shoulder. She seemed to be from a distant world. On a particularly difficult Saturday, I made the decision to rebel in the tiniest way. I knew how as our family prepared for one of Dad's faculty parties, a complete bore, but an event we had to attend. I wore boots that most obviously did not fit the accepted norm and applied my darkest eyeliner. "You're not leaving in that manner, are you?" Mom saw me coming up the stairs, gazing at my boots as though they were filthy. I shrugged, using my coat to cover. I failed to see why not. She let out a long, drawn-out sigh, as if I were the biggest letdown in her world of flawless organization. "Jenna, please, could you try fitting in for once?" "Why? Can you just act like we're a perfect family?" Weary of the same old debate, I fired back. "It's not about acting. It's about honoring your father," she asserted, adopting a firm, businesslike tone in her voice. Hearing the conversation, Linda came trotting down the hall, sounding like a judge stepping up to the bench with her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Amy, Mom is correct. Trying to appear good is not that difficult. Why must you always make things challenging?" My face started to get flushed, so I said, "I don't want to be a clone of you, Linda." I detested being compared to others in these fights, but I detested feeling different in my own house the most of all. At the foot of the stairs, Dad materialized, his brows strained. "Jenna, get up and move." He stated emphatically, "We're leaving in 15 minutes, giving no opportunity for debate." He didn't have to yell, so he didn't. The disillusionment in his gaze was sufficient to make me retreat to my room, replace my boots with simple flats, and remove half of my eyeliner. Except for the soothing classical music Dad insisted on playing, the car was silent as we made our way to the celebration. Gazing out the window, I observed the trees flitting by. At that very moment, I made a pledge to myself. One day, I would live a life free from outside influences that dictated my appearance, behavior, or identity. I'd be free from these expectations one day. The only area of the home where I could imagine being somewhere else was my room. My room was mine, but the rest of the home was filled with my parents' preferences. Though it wasn't much, just 3 walls covered with music posters and sketches, it served as my haven from the demands of my family. One evening, while I was attempting to lose myself in my favorite band's playlist, Dad came knocking on my door and strode into my room, his expression fixed in a well-known grimace. "Jenna, please quiet down. Additionally, why didn't you study with Linda today? You both know you have tests coming up," he stated in a firm tone. I took out one earbud and gave him a calm gaze while attempting to speak. "My studies have been going on, but not with Linda. I learn best when I'm by myself." Dad shook his head, obviously not convinced. "You are aware of the guidelines. You ought to be striving for the same academic success as your sister. Why you have to make things tough all the time is beyond me." "It's not about making things hard," I murmured as my annoyance mounted. I don't see why I have to follow Linda's instructions for everything. Can't I learn in the way that suits me best? He didn't respond to that, just switched to another complaint. And those friends of yours, I saw you with them at the cafe yesterday. I don't think they're a good influence. You should be spending time with the daughters of my colleagues. They're more suitable. I felt my temper rising. Suitable for what? For you. Because they talk about economics and pretend to enjoy those boring university gatherings. Before he could answer, Mom appeared at the doorway, her voice sharp. Jenna, your father is right. Those girls are from good families. They know how to behave. They're the kind of friends you should want. I stood up, facing both of them. What if I don't want friends who are picked for me? What if I want to choose my own friends, choose what I study, or even decide what I want to be? That's enough, Jenna, Mom said firmly. You know your future is with the university. Your father has made sure of that. And after you graduate, you'll need to start thinking about settling down. We've already discussed this. Settling down. The words felt like a prison sentence. You mean thinking about being someone's wife like Linda? Is that all you think I've meant for? Mom's face softened a bit, but her voice stayed firm. We want what's best for you. Following the path we've set out will give you a good life. A good life? I repeated, the irony bitter in my mouth. Is it a good life if it's someone else's idea of good? No one answered. They didn't need to. We all knew there was no point in arguing. They had their plans, and they expected me to follow them, just like Linda. Linda and I were like two sides of the same coin, always together but never on the same page. At the university where Dad taught, the differences between us became even clearer. She was into business management, the golden child, always nodding along in lectures and asking smart questions that made the professor smile. Me, I was stuck in the same program, but it felt like wearing the shoe on the wrong foot. Awkward, uncomfortable, and just plain wrong. One afternoon, as I was struggling through a pile of textbooks in the library, Linda breezed in, her notes organized, her smile ready. Hey, Emmy, you coming to the study group tonight? Professor Hall mentioned he might drop by. It could be good for us to show up, she said, her tone light but insistent. I glanced up, feeling the weight of her expectations. No, I don't think so. Those things aren't really my scene, you know. She frowned, putting her books down with a thud that matched her disapproval. It's not about it being your scene, Emmy. It's about making the right impressions. You need to start taking this seriously. We're graduating soon. I shrugged and turned back to my notes. I am taking it seriously, just not in a way that makes me unhappy. Why should I pretend? Because, Amy, sometimes you have to play the game to get ahead, she said, waving at her neat textbooks and color-coded notes. It's not about liking it. It's about doing what's necessary. I shook my head and pushed my chair back with a scrape. Well, maybe I'm tired of doing what's necessary according to everyone else. Have you ever thought of that? Her voice softened, but her eyes were still firm. Amy, I'm just trying to help you. Dad won't always be around to fix things. What will you do if you keep pushing everyone away? Maybe I'll figure it out on my own. Maybe I don't need to follow Dad's path or yours, I replied, feeling a surge of defiance. Linda sighed, clearly frustrated. You're so stubborn. Just try, okay, for me, if not for yourself. Show up tonight and talk to Professor Hall. It won't kill you. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not just my perfect sister, but someone who cared in her own way. Fine, I'll think about it. I conceded, not ready to promise more. Thank you, she said, her smile returning. It's not that bad, you know. You might even like it if you gave it a chance. Doubt it, I muttered, but I knew I had lost this round. For Linda, I'd show up, sit through another boring discussion, and not at the right times. It was just a few hours. How bad could it be? As it turned out, not as bad as I thought. Professor Hall was surprisingly interesting when he wasn't lecturing from a podium. I even asked a question, which earned a shocked but pleased look from Linda. Later, as we walked back to our dorm, Linda nudged me. "See, not so terrible, right?" That fragile piece didn't last long. In our final year, Linda introduced us to her fiancé, a lawyer 12 years older, already well-established, and exactly what our parents dreamed of. Mom and Dad were thrilled, praising Linda for making such a smart choice. Then they turned their hopeful eyes on me. "Now, Jenna, it's your turn to find someone suitable," Dad said one evening over dinner, his tone implying my time was running out. Mom nodded enthusiastically, already planning out my life, as if it were another one of her well-organized projects. "Think about your future, dear. Someone who can provide for you, who has a good standing." I remember staring at my plate, feeling trapped. Linda's wedding was planned down to the smallest detail by Mom, from the bridesmaids' dresses to the flowers. Everything showed off her perfect vision of family prestige. After the wedding, Mom often visited Linda, giving advice and making sure Linda's life went exactly as she had planned. Watching this, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want my life controlled by someone else. One day, I was walking down the street, lost in thoughts about escaping the life my parents wanted for me, when I heard the deep rumble of a motorcycle. Curiosity made me look. That's when I saw him, Brian, with his leather jacket and carefree smile, pulling up beside me. "You look like you need a ride," he called over the roar of the engine, a playful sparkle in his eyes. I hesitated, looking back toward the path home, then at his outstretched hand. What did I have to lose? "Sure, why not?" I said, my voice a mix of nerves and excitement. Climbing onto the back of his bike, I felt a rush of adrenaline as we sped away. The wind whipped through my hair, and for the first time in a long while, I laughed. A real laugh. Brian shouted something about showing me his world, and I held on tighter, not wanting the moment to end. We stopped at a diner popular with bikers. Over burgers and fries, Brian told me about his life as a welder, his love for bikes, and his passion for the open road. It was so different from anything I was used to, raw and real. "Don't you get scared living like this?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the clatter of plates and chatter around us. "Scared? No, it's thrilling. You never know what's around the corner. Isn't that better than having everything planned out for you?" He replied, his eyes lighting up with each word. Over the next few weeks, we met in secret. Each ride on Brian's motorcycle took me further from the life I was supposed to live and closer to the life I wanted. The speed, the adventure, it wasn't just about the thrill. It was about feeling alive, feeling free. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a secluded overlook, Brian turned to me. "Jenna, I don't just ride to escape. I ride to feel alive, to make every moment count with you. Every moment feels like it's worth something." I leaned into him, my heart beating fast. "I've never felt like this before. You make me feel free, Brian." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Then let's not go back to just existing. Let's live." 5 months with Brian felt like a lifetime of moments I had always dreamed of. The day he would propose under the stars, with the gentle rumble of his bike in the background, my heart said yes before my mouth could form the word. It was perfect, except for one big problem: my parents. I was scared to introduce Brian to them. He was everything they disapproved of: his rough edges, his wild spirit, his simple but happy life as a welder. But love gave me courage, and I decided it was time for them to know. The day I brought Brian home, He wore his usual leather vest, red t-shirt, ripped jeans, and a bandana. I loved that about him. He was always himself. As we walked up the driveway, I could already feel the weight of my parents' judgment. When we stepped inside, Mom's face went pale at the sight of Brian, her eyes widening in shock. "What in the world, Jenna?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Dad's reaction was harsher, his words sharp as knives. "Who is this, and why is he dressed like a thug in our house?" I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Mom, Dad, this is Brian. He's the man I love. We're getting married." The silence was deafening. Then Dad turned to Brian, his tone full of disdain. "Married? What do you do for a living, young man? What are your qualifications?" Brian, bless him, didn't waver. "I'm a welder. I took some specialized courses after high school. I work hard and make an honest living." The look on my parents' faces was a mix of horror and disbelief. Mom looked like she might faint. "A welder? Jenna, you can't be serious." Dad's voice rose, anger flaring. "You expect us to bless this? To throw away your future for a welder?" I felt my resolve harden. "Yes, because he makes me happy. Isn't that what should matter? But the life you'll lead." Mom started, her voice trembling. "It will be the life I choose." I shot back, my own voice gaining strength. Dad shook his head, his decision clear. "We cannot and will not support this. If you choose him, don't expect to be a part of this family." The finality in his tone broke my heart, but not my decision. Brian squeezed my hand, giving me the strength to face them. "Then I choose Brian. I choose us. I choose my happiness." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's jaw clenched tight. "If you walk out with him, don't bother coming back," Dad said, his voice cold. Walking away from my parents' house with Brian, my heart was a mess of emotions, pain, relief, excitement, and fear all mixed into one. The night air felt different, like each breath was a new beginning. I took a step further into a new life. We rode in silence for a while, the steady roar of the motorcycle beneath us. When we finally stopped at a small diner on the edge of town, Brian turned to me with a serious look. "Are you sure about this, Jenna? I mean, really sure? There's no going back after tonight," he said, his eyes searching mine for any sign of doubt. I nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "I've never been more sure of anything. Being with you feels right. It feels like what I'm meant to do." He smiled that reckless, charming smile that had won me over the first day we met. "All right then, let's do it. Let's start our life together." Inside the diner, we found a quiet booth in the corner. The waitress brought us 2 coffees without asking, and we sat there planning our next steps. "So what's first?" I asked, stirring cream into my coffee and watching it swirl. "We'll need to find a place to stay, at least for a while, and maybe look for jobs. I have some buddies who can help us get started," Brian replied, sounding practical but hopeful. "It's going to be tough, isn't it?" I said, more as a statement than a question. The reality of what we were doing was starting to sink in. Brian reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "It might be, but we'll handle it together. Tough is nothing new for either of us, right?" I couldn't help but laugh, a short, genuine burst of amusement. "Right." Together, we spent hours in that diner talking and planning. Every so often, Brian would mention an idea that sounded so wild and free that it made my heart jump. "And maybe one day we'll save enough to take that road trip across the country. Just you, me, and the open road." "I like that," I said, allowing myself to dream bigger than I ever had. Riding back into the city, we began our search. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. We found a small apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Brian found work at a local garage, and I picked up shifts at a nearby diner. Life was hard, but it was ours. We made do with what we had, and every night when we came home to each other, it felt like we had everything. Months later, we decided it was time to make it official and got married in a small, intimate ceremony. I held on to a small hope that my family would show up, that they would see how happy I was and let go of their prejudices. But the chairs we had reserved for them stayed empty, and no congratulatory messages came. Despite the sting of their absence, the day was perfect because it was ours. Over time, I grew very close to Brian's mom. She welcomed me with open arms, calling me her daughter and filling in the gaps left by my own family. Her warmth and acceptance helped heal some of the wounds left by my parents' rejection. Things finally started looking up for Brian and me after he completed some additional training and became a certified underwater welder. His income shot up to $230,000 a year. That change made a huge difference. Friends, we managed to buy a townhouse in a nice area, the kind of place I had always dreamed about but never thought I'd actually live in. I started working as a dispatcher in Brian's company. It wasn't just a job. It felt like I was part of something important, supporting the man I loved and building our future together. On weekends, we escaped the city on his bike, roaring through winding roads and taking in the breathtaking views of nature. Those moments, with the wind in my hair and Brian's warmth against my back, were pure bliss. Living nearby, my mother-in-law became a frequent visitor. One afternoon, while Brian was tinkering in the garage and I was making coffee, she arrived looking a bit troubled. "There's been some bad news," she said as she settled down at the kitchen table. Something about a professor at the university involved in a harassment scandal. My heart skipped a beat. Did they say who it was? I tried to keep my voice steady, dreading the answer. She shook her head. "No, they didn't mention a name on the radio, but you know how these things go. It's probably all over the TV by now." Nodding, I turned on the television and tuned into the news. Sure enough, there was a report on the scandal. As I had feared, my father's face appeared on the screen. The anchor detailed the accusations against him, and I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Turning off the TV, I sat down heavily, trying to process the news. Brian came in, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw my face. "What's wrong, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "It's my dad. He's been accused of harassing a student." Brian's expression grew serious for a moment before he came over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Jenna. That's tough news. How do you want to handle this?" I shook my head, feeling unsure about everything. "I don't know. I mean, what can I even do? We're not close anymore." He squeezed my hand, showing he understood. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We don't have to figure it all out right now." I decided to wait and see how things unfolded before making any moves. Whatever decision I made, I knew Brian would be by my side, and that gave me the strength to face whatever came next. Life had been peaceful until that unexpected afternoon at work when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. I hadn't seen my parents in a long time, and the sight of them stirred up a mix of emotions I thought I had put to rest. They both looked dramatically different. The scandal had taken its toll. Mom had lost a lot of weight and looked much older, while Dad seemed broken, a shadow of the stern man he once was. My mother saw me and rushed over, arms open as if nothing had happened, as if years of distance and disapproval could be erased in an instant. But I couldn't embrace her. Not now. Instead, I stepped back and took Brian's hand, drawing strength from his presence. Jenna, it was so hard to find you. Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. Dad, always the blunt one, got straight to the point. His voice was harsh and bitter. I was accused unfairly, you know. I went to your sister's husband for help, but that leech wanted a fortune. Your sister sided with him, and now they've kicked us out. We need your help. I was filled with fury and disbelief as I glanced at them. Hade, you appear and ask for assistance after all these years. Mom said the frantic words, "We have nowhere else to go. They have also disowned us. We might be able to stay with you, we thought." I nearly laughed at the ridiculousness. Will you remain with me? Following your disavowal of me, you explicitly stated that I was no longer your daughter. Dad's scarlet cheeks signaled a relapse of his old fury. Jenna, you owe us for everything we've done for you. With renewed resolution, I answered, that's where you're wrong. As I cut them off, I feel Brian give me a supportive hand squeeze. I owe you nothing at all. I chose happiness above your demands, and you kicked me out for it. Now you want to move in and pretend like we're a family again. As things started to get out of hand, I noticed that a small group of individuals was observing. Mom broke out in tears, attracting further attention with her loud sobs. Through sobs, she charged, "You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you." I inhaled deeply, knowing what I wanted to do. I'm not ungrateful, Mom, I promise. I'm content and at liberty. You now have to live with the decisions you made. I heard my dad screaming as we were leaving, but Brian reached over and said to the security personnel, "Don't let them come here again." Those next few months passed quickly, chock full of serenity and love. With the arrival of our baby, our expanding family began anew. My parents left and never returned. The last time I saw them was that day in the parking lot. Even though I felt sad about what might have been, I knew that I had chosen well for my family and myself.